My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and 17 days before my younger sister's wedding, my parents sent me an email listing 5 conditions I had to meet if I wanted a seat in that ballroom. I had to drop every financial complaint I'd ever raised against her, sign a confidentiality agreement, give up my claim to our grandmother's property, contribute $25,000 toward the wedding, and read a public apology for, in my father's words, damaging family unity. At the bottom, he'd written, "Complete all 5 and we'll let you come." I read it twice. Then I noticed the attachment they wanted signed before midnight. They thought the deadline would scare me into folding. Instead, it made everything painfully clear. I typed 4 words back. I declined all 5. Then I booked a beach suite in Santa Barbara for the wedding weekend and called a courier about one final gift. The box I sent looked elegant enough for a bride who had turned her wedding into a 300-person performance. But inside was something my sister had spent 2 years making sure nobody would ever see. I knew she'd open it publicly because she'd already instructed the MC to announce every expensive gift from important family on stage. What she didn't know was that my gift held no jewelry, no check, no tearful apology. It held a timeline, a voice recording, and a document carrying a signature that looked exactly like mine, but wasn't. Before I tell you what happened after that box was opened, I'm curious. What time is it where you're watching this from? I like imagining how far these stories travel. The first person I need to tell you about is my younger sister, Vanessa. For most of our lives, our parents treated her mistakes like emergencies someone else, usually me, was responsible for fixing. She was warm in public, quick with a compliment, gifted at making people feel special. At home, she measured relationships by what they could do for her. When she needed an apartment deposit, I loaned it to her. When she quit a marketing job after 6 months, I rewrote her resume and covered 2 months of rent. When she launched her event planning business, I introduced her to 3 clients from my accounting firm. Every favor came with the same promise. She'd pay me back once things stabilized. Things never stabilized. Only the excuses changed shape. Our grandmother had noticed the pattern long before the rest of us admitted it. When she passed, she left her restored coastal property, a place called Willow Cove, to Vanessa and me equally, with a clause requiring both our signatures for any loan, sale, or major renovation. It wasn't just sentimental. Willow Cove earned steady income hosting small weddings and retreats. I managed the finances. Vanessa handled marketing. That balance held until she got engaged to a restaurant developer named Ryan Coleman, who was thoughtful, successful, and completely convinced Vanessa had built her business without any family help. 6 months before the wedding, I found a loan payment on the Willow Cove ledger I'd never approved. When I asked Vanessa about it, she laughed it off as a temporary line of credit for renovations. I requested the loan file. She stalled. My parents told me not to cause tension before the wedding. Eventually, the lender sent me a partial copy, and there it was. A commercial note for $240,000, secured against Willow Cove, bearing what looked exactly like my electronic signature. I had never seen that document in my life. When I confronted her privately, Vanessa didn't even deny using the money. She said the wedding had ballooned in cost, her business had cash flow problems, and Ryan's restaurant needed a bridge investment. Then she leaned across my desk and said, "You own half of something valuable. I needed you to act like family." I told her a forged signature wasn't a family favor. She accused me of being jealous she was getting married first. That night, my mother called and said Vanessa had made a technical mistake that could be fixed if I simply signed retroactive consent. My father followed the next morning, reminding me how embarrassing an investigation would be for everyone. I refused. 2 weeks later, the 5 conditions landed in my inbox. The confidentiality agreement wasn't really about wedding behavior. Buried on page 6 was language releasing Vanessa, my parents, their businesses, and the lender from any claims tied to prior financial decisions. The public apology was designed to make me look unstable before I ever had the chance to challenge the forged loan. The $25,000 contribution would quietly replace missing money in the property account. And surrendering my share of Willow Cove would hand Vanessa complete control of the exact collateral she'd used without my consent. For the first time, I understood. The conditions weren't insults. They were a coordinated plan to erase the evidence against them while I smiled for the cameras. I forwarded everything to my attorney, then called my closest friend, Grace Whitman. She'd warned me years earlier that loyalty without boundaries eventually becomes unpaid labor. She listened, then asked one question. Do you want to be understood, or do you want to be protected? Both, I said. You might have to pick the order, she said gently. Protection came first. I placed a fraud alert on my credit, requested the full loan file, and had my attorney formally dispute the signature. Then I booked Santa Barbara. Vanessa had spent months designing an elaborate pre-ceremony presentation where select relatives would offer blessings and gifts before the doors opened for the vows, even emailing me twice asking for a meaningful family tribute to play on the ballroom screen. I decided to give her exactly that, a record of what our family had actually become, assembled with the same precision I use in a forensic audit. 3 days later, Grace and I sat in Santa Barbara, surrounded by bank statements, loan exhibits, and color-coded notes. Every hour uncovered another fact that made the 5 conditions feel less like family pressure and more like an attempted cover-up. The loan file confirmed my signature had been submitted from an internet address tied to Vanessa's office, using identity answers only close family would know, including a driver's license copy I'd given my mother the year before for what she called routine insurance records. When I asked how Vanessa's got it, my mother said she had no idea. Her answer came too fast. You don't believe her, Grace said, watching my face. I honestly didn't know what I believed anymore. Discovering betrayal doesn't make you brave right away. It makes you question every ordinary memory attached to it. Those memories didn't disappear. They just felt contaminated. I traced the loan proceeds through the property account, $90,000 into Vanessa's company, $68,000 to a vendor connected to Ryan's restaurant project, $42,000 toward wedding deposits, $27,000 routed through my parents' consulting business before circling back to Vanessa as a family gift. The rest gone to fees and overdue bills. Then Grace found the real twist, a spreadsheet projecting ownership of Willow Cove after the wedding. Vanessa listed herself as sole controller, Ryan as future investor, and me under a column labeled Released Interest, dated 2 months before the 5 conditions arrived. Beside my name, will signed to preserve invitation. She hadn't hoped I would go along with it. She had calculated it. My instinct to avoid embarrassing the family had become a line item on her spreadsheet. Buried in an old voicemail thread, I found a message Vanessa had left after a few drinks at a work event, one I'd once dismissed as a rant. Now it sounded different. She said our parents were finally handling Claire, that once I signed the release, the loan would be too widely shared to challenge, and that Ryan never needed to know where his restaurant money really came from. He'd pay it back after opening anyway. At the end, she laughed. She'll be mad for a month, then fix it like she always does. I played it twice. The second time, I felt no triumph. I felt shame because I recognized the pattern just as accurately as she did. I had fixed it every time for years and called it love because admitting it was fear would have meant changing much sooner. That became the center of the gift. Not a highlight reel of old grievances, but a clear chain of adult decisions. The forged signature, The diverted funds, the buried release language, the plan to keep Ryan in the dark, and my parents' effort to secure my silence. Grace and I built a 12-minute video using only verifiable documents. No music, no insults, just a date, an amount, a source on every screen. The final slide read, "A wedding cannot create trust where fraud has been used to manufacture consent." I prepared 3 sealed folders, one for Ryan with the full transaction trail tied to his restaurant, one for my parents with my attorney's notice demanding preservation of records, one for Vanessa with the 5 conditions, my refusal, and a formal demand for repayment. On top, a handwritten note. "You asked for a public apology. This is the public accounting." Grace called it cold. I said cold felt safer than cruel. The gift wasn't meant to invent consequences, only to remove the secrecy that had kept real ones from ever reaching her. Vanessa's planner had already given me the opening. A legacy gift ceremony was scheduled before the vows, live streamed for remote guests, with my name still listed for the final slot, Sisters Tribute Video. My parents had clearly assumed I'd fold before the deadline. I emailed the planner, said I wouldn't attend, but would still honor my tribute, and attached the video along with the tracking number. She replied that Vanessa had personally insisted I be featured, since family reconciliation was part of the day's story. The irony was almost funny. My attorney reviewed everything before it shipped, then filed a formal affidavit disputing the signature and requesting an immediate freeze on further draws against Willow Cove. At 9:12 the next morning, my father called. No hello. "What did you tell the bank?" "The truth," I said. He warned that contractors, vendors, and Ryan's restaurant could all be harmed. I asked why my forged signature had been fine when the harm belonged entirely to me. "This is bigger than one signature," he said, telling me more than he meant to. "Did you know?" I asked. 4 seconds of silence. Then he admitted, "My mother had only handed over my license because Vanessa promised it was temporary." "You let her use my identity," I said. "Sometimes parents make difficult choices to keep a family together," he replied. "Families held together by unauthorized debt were already broken," I said and hung up. My mother tried old photos and guilt. I forwarded it all to my attorney and turned off notifications. That evening, Vanessa called from an unknown number. "Do you have any idea what you're threatening?" Then her tone softened. She wanted me beside her. Sisters shouldn't let paperwork ruin a once-in-a-lifetime day. I asked her plainly if she'd sign my name. "I did what everyone needed," she said. Grace, beside me, heard it on speaker. "You always land on your feet," Vanessa continued. "I needed one thing to be mine. Not remorse. Entitlement, dressed as pain." "The box is already in transit," I told her. She screamed, demanding to know what was inside. "Everything you were sure I'd keep private," I said, and hung up. My hand shook so badly, I knocked over a glass of water. Grace didn't congratulate me. She just helped me clean it up. The next afternoon, I opened the live stream in our Santa Barbara suite. I didn't feel powerful. I felt like I'd stepped onto a bridge after setting fire to the road behind me. The stream opened on a ballroom full of orchids and candlelight, 300 guests murmuring over champagne. One by one, relatives came forward with gifts, an antique watch, our grandmother's pearl comb, a contribution toward the couple's future home. Each drew applause and a staged photograph. Vanessa looked radiant. If she was afraid, she hid it well. When the MC reached the final slot, my mother whispered something to her. Vanessa shook her head. "Our final tribute comes from the bride's sister Claire," the MC announced, "who couldn't be here today, but sent something especially meaningful." Vanessa stood before anyone could stop her. "My sister and I have had our differences," she said, wearing that soft, wounded expression she always used for sympathy. "But today is about forgiveness." Applause followed. My father didn't clap. The walnut box was carried onto the stage. Vanessa glanced at the camera as if looking straight at me. Whatever she sent, I accepted with love. She lifted the lid, a silver frame of us as teenagers at Willow Cove, and beneath it, an envelope labeled Read Aloud. The MC unfolded it. His expression changed after the first line. Vanessa reached for it, but he'd already read enough into the microphone. To my sister, you asked me to surrender my legal claims, my property interest, my silence, and $25,000 in exchange for permission to attend your wedding. I declined, because consent obtained through pressure is not consent. The ballroom went silent. My mother rose. Vanessa snatched the letter. Turn off the microphone, Shati, she whispered. But the screen had already changed. The tribute video began right on schedule. The 5 conditions appeared exactly as written. Then the buried release language. Then the loan. $240,000. The disputed signature. The address tied to Vanessa's office. Ryan stepped closer. Why is Claire's name on that? It's misleading, Vanessa said. The transfer chart followed. $90,000 to her company, $42,000 to the wedding, $68,000 to Ryan's restaurant. His face changed. You told me that money came from retained earnings. She reached for his arm. He stepped back. My father pushed toward the stage, insisting the documents were out of context. Then the recording played, Vanessa's own voice filling the ballroom. Once Claire signs, the loan becomes too shared to challenge. Ryan never needs to know where the money started. Her laugh followed, sharper through the speakers than I remembered. Vanessa froze, then screamed, "Shut it off!" Not fear of what was hidden, but terror at hearing her own certainty made public. Ryan opened his folder, read the transaction trail and my attorney's letter, and looked at Vanessa like he was seeing her for the first time. The final slide appeared. This presentation has also been provided to the lender and legal counsel. No one here is being asked to choose a side. You are being asked to look at the record. Then the screen went dark. For several seconds, the ballroom stayed silent. Then everyone spoke at once. 2 of Vanessa's clients slipped out, photographing the transfer chart on their phones. Vanessa pointed at the box, insisting I'd fabricated everything out of jealousy. My mother rushed to defend her. My father grabbed the microphone, calling it a temporary family misunderstanding. That phrase broke whatever patience Ryan had left. He walked to center stage. Did you authorize a transfer into my company without telling me where the money came from? I was trying to help you, she said. Did you forge her signature? You would have approved it eventually. Did your parents know? My mother tried to answer for her. Ryan raised a hand. I asked Vanessa. For the first time, no one rushed to rescue her. She finally admitted she'd completed the signature online because a deadline was closing in, insisting the property's value made it harmless, and that I had always resented her success. Ryan turned another page. This says you plan to transfer her ownership to yourself once she signed the release. Was that harmless too? Her face hardened. Marriage requires loyalty. You should be defending me, not interrogating me in front of strangers. These aren't strangers, he said quietly. They're witnesses. My father warned him not to make a decision he'd regret. Ryan said the decision had already been made the moment his business was funded with money he never knew was stolen. He took the ring from his pocket, never yet worn, and set it on the table. There won't be a ceremony today. The room gasped. Vanessa grabbed his jacket, begging him to reconsider. He stepped away, asking security to walk him to a private room to call his attorney. My mother shouted that I had ruined the wedding. Then the planner announced a video call request from me. Ryan had actually texted Grace, asking if I'd answer 3 questions. I almost said no. Then I thought about how many times my family had talked about me while never letting me speak for myself. I accepted. Did you ever authorize the loan? Ryan asked. No. Did you approve the transfer into my company? No. Did you demand the wedding be canceled? No, I said. I disputed my forged signature and disclosed where the money came from. What you do with that is yours to decide. Vanessa shouted, I'd staged it all for humiliation. You're right about one thing, I told her. I chose a public setting. because every private conversation had been used to pressure me into silence, and because you planned to use my surrender as proof the family stood behind you. You wanted my apology on that screen. Instead, I gave the room the truth. My father ordered the call cut. Ryan said, "Let her finish." I looked at my parents and asked if they'd given Vanessa my driver's license. My mother covered her mouth. My father admitted it had been a mistake, that their attorney assured them the release would prevent a lawsuit. My aunt turned to my mother. "You knew this was never about wedding behavior." My mother started crying, saying they'd been terrified the loan collapsing would take down Vanessa's business, Ryan's restaurant, and Willow Cove all at once. "So you decided I should fail quietly instead," I said. No one argued. Then Vanessa said the thing that ended any sympathy left in that room. "Because you could afford it. I had a growing company, no wedding to pay for, no one depending on me. Taking the debt would have cost you less than losing everything would cost me." Ryan stared at her. My parents stared at the floor. One sentence had confirmed the belief behind every condition, that my stability made me a target. "Wealth doesn't turn theft into sharing," I said, and ended the call. The rest reached me in pieces over the following hour. Ryan left with his parents and stopped the officiant from submitting any marriage license. His business partner froze all spending tied to the disputed investment. The lender suspended Willow Cove's credit line and contacted every guarantor. The venue demanded payment for the remaining balance. Vanessa's card was declined, since it pulled from the now frozen account. My father paid it himself just to avoid a lawsuit. The flowers, the band, the custom dinner all stayed exactly in place for a wedding that no longer existed. I didn't celebrate. I stepped out onto the balcony, the ocean black except where the moonlight touched it. Grace stood beside me without a word. I'd wanted the truth to create consequences. I hadn't expected them to feel this much like grief. The investigation took 7 months. The lender's records confirmed Vanessa had used my information from her own office. And that my mother had sent the license directly. My parents avoided criminal charges by cooperating, but not the financial fallout. Their consulting company had received part of the loan, so they were treated as participants. They sold their lake house, drained most of their retirement savings, and paid a significant settlement. My father resigned from 2 nonprofit boards. My mother stopped speaking to relatives who wouldn't call what happened anything but Claire's revenge. Vanessa carried the heaviest weight. Her company collapsed within 3 months. Once clients stopped trusting her with deposits, Ryan ended the engagement permanently and returned every gift he could trace, later replacing the tainted investment with clean money and legally separating his business from any claim of hers. He sent me one letter, thanking me and apologizing for benefiting from money he hadn't questioned closely enough. I believed him. I didn't build anything further with it. Some endings don't need a new beginning attached. Vanessa eventually accepted a plea agreement for fraud and identity misuse, a suspended sentence, community supervision, and restitution that will likely follow her for years. Her share of Willow Cove moved into a court-supervised trust, and I became its temporary manager, not to win the property, but to rebuild what her choices had damaged. Within a year, it was profitable again. I used part of my management fee to start a small legal aid fund for people navigating financial abuse within their own families, giving the whole ordeal a purpose beyond punishment. My relationship with my parents never fully recovered. They wrote, called, asked about counseling. I agreed to one session. My father said they'd always believed I was the strongest person in the family. I told him strength was never consent to carry everyone else's consequences. My mother apologized, but still asked if the public presentation had really been necessary. Honestly, maybe not. I could have let the lawyers handle it privately, but privacy had protected them for years, and they'd planned to use that wedding crowd to certify a false version of events. I wasn't sorry the crowd finally saw the record. I was only sorry none of us had stopped the pattern before a ballroom became the one place denial could no longer survive. Vanessa reached out once, after sentencing. No greeting, just, "You got everything." I replied, "No, I kept what was already mine." Then I blocked the number. On the anniversary of the wedding that never happened, I went back to Santa Barbara alone and looked again at that photograph. Vanessa and me as teenagers at Willow Cove, long before money and family roles hardened around us. For a moment, I missed the sister in that picture. Then I understood that missing who someone used to be doesn't mean reopening the door to who they chose to become. I hadn't mailed a dangerous object. I'd mailed evidence. The terror in that ballroom came from recognition, not surprise. Vanessa had built her future on the assumption that I would always protect her from the truth. When that assumption failed, everything resting on it failed with it. Some people called what I did revenge. Others called it accountability. I think it was both, but revenge alone would have ended at her humiliation. Accountability kept going through restitution, through boundaries, through the quiet work of rebuilding what her choices broke. So I'll ask you what I've asked myself more than once. If your own family demanded you sign away your rights just to preserve a perfect celebration, would you expose the truth publicly? Or would you let the lawyers speak in private and simply walk away? Thank you for spending this time with me. Every name here has been changed, but the feeling behind it is real for so many people. If this reminded you of anything in your own life, remember, loyalty was never meant to come at the cost of your own protection. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't staying quiet to keep the peace. It's finally correcting an imbalance that lasted far too long.